General Hospital will reveal Rocco received the message from Charlotte while talking to Danny, and the moment he read its contents, his heart started pounding faster. This wasn't just a random text, it was a clue, something important that could lead them to her whereabouts. Without hesitation, he handed his phone to Danny, whose eyes widened as he scanned the message. They both knew they couldn't keep this to themselves. There was only one person they could trust to take action immediately, Jason. Without wasting another second, the boys ran as fast as they could to find him. When Jason saw the urgency on their faces, he knew something serious was going on. As Rocco and Danny explained, he listened intently, processing every detail of Charlotte's message. The text was cryptic, but it contained just enough information to piece together a possible location. Jason immediately understood the gravity of the situation. Charlotte was out there, beyond the reach of those who cared about her, and that was unacceptable. Lulu was still in no condition to go after her daughter herself, which made bringing Charlotte home even more crucial. Jason had spent years operating in the shadows, handling dangerous situations that required precision and a clear head. This was no different. The only thing that mattered now was getting Charlotte back safely. He knew the town of Port Charles was anxiously awaiting news of the young girl's return, especially Lulu, who had already lost too much time with her daughter. Jason couldn't let her suffer any longer. His mind worked quickly, formulating a plan. He needed to confirm whether anyone else had received a similar message. If Charlotte was in trouble, she might not be alone, and he couldn't risk making any reckless moves that could endanger her further. But there was no time to waste, every second that passed meant more uncertainty. Jason was prepared to do whatever it took. As he gathered what he needed, his instincts kicked in. He had been away for years, but his purpose had never changed. He was still the man who protected those he cared about, the one people turned to when they needed someone who wouldn't hesitate in the face of danger. This mission was no different. He had to find Charlotte before the situation spiraled out of control. There was only one question left: would he be able to bring her home before it was too late? Charlotte had always been devoted to her father, and for that reason, she was willing to follow Valentine wherever he led her. But anyone with an outside perspective could see that this life was not what she deserved. Instead of enjoying the simple freedoms of her teenage years, spending time with friends, making new memories, and discovering who she was, Charlotte was trapped in a world of secrecy, isolation, and constant danger. Separated from the people who loved her most, including her mother and her brother, Charlotte had no real sense of stability. Her childhood had been stripped away, replaced by a life on the run. What should have been a time of growth and exploration had turned into an endless cycle of uncertainty. Valentine believed he was protecting her, shielding her from the threats surrounding them, but in reality, he was robbing her of the chance to live a normal life. What made the situation even worse was the constant shadow of Brennan, who had already proven himself as a dangerous enemy. He had once tried to kill Valentine, and the only reason he wasn't still a threat was because Valentine had struck first, dealing with him in a brutal act of revenge at the spa. But that hadn't erased the danger. If anything, it had only escalated matters. Valentine was still a wanted man, and his enemies weren't far behind. Charlotte's reality was one where every step forward had to be carefully planned, every move watched, every interaction questioned. There was no real home, no security. Only temporary hideouts and the knowledge that they could never stay in one place for too long. She had spent too much time dodging bullets, both literal and figurative, instead of experiencing the joys of growing up. Through it all, she remained loyal to Valentine, wanting to be the dutiful daughter who stood by his side no matter what. But what she didn't realize, what Valentine himself was too blinded by his own fears and selfish desires to see, was that his love for her was costing her everything. He was so determined to keep her close that he couldn't see how much damage he was doing in the process. Charlotte deserved more than this life of running and hiding. She deserved a chance to be happy, to be safe, to be a teenager. But as long as Valentine refused to let go of his paranoia and his dangerous ways, that future would always remain out of reach. There was no doubt that Jason would go wherever Charlotte was to bring her home to her mother. His instincts as a protector, his unwavering sense of duty, and his deep understanding of the stakes meant that he wouldn't hesitate. However, the question remained, would he tell Lulu about his plan before taking action? Jason knew Lulu had been through too much already. The emotional toll of being separated from her daughter, combined with her lingering struggles, made him hesitant to give her hope prematurely. If she sensed that a rescue was imminent, she might act impulsively or become overwhelmed, which could create more complications. Jason also had to consider the possibility that the message Rocco received was misleading. Just because it pointed to a location didn't mean Charlotte would be there. He needed to gather more intel, confirm every detail, and ensure that this wasn't some kind of trap before alerting Lulu. Still, there was an undeniable certainty in Jason's methods. When he went after someone, he brought them home. If Charlotte was out there, Jason would find her. And if she was in trouble, he would do whatever it took to get her out safely. But this time, the risks were greater than he could have anticipated. Brennan, who had already made an attempt on Valentine's life, would not take kindly to Jason interfering. If Jason's actions disrupted Brennan's plan, it would not only put Valentine in greater danger, but it would also make Jason a target. And Brennan was not the type of man to let an enemy walk away unscathed. His retaliation would be swift and brutal, and his methods wouldn't be limited to Jason alone. If Jason got in his way, Brennan would make sure the punishment was personal. And what better way to hurt Jason than to go after someone he cared about? Danny, who had unknowingly played a part in setting Jason on this mission, would be in grave danger. Brennan was ruthless, and if he saw an opportunity to break Jason by striking at his family, he would take it without hesitation. Jason knew he was stepping into dangerous territory, but he had no choice. He couldn't let Charlotte remain trapped in this nightmare. He couldn't let Lulu lose her daughter again. And if it meant putting himself at risk to bring her home, so be it. But what he didn't yet realize was that Brennan was already watching, already preparing to counter every move. And if Jason wasn't careful, this mission wouldn't just be about saving Charlotte, it would be about protecting his own son from a vengeful enemy lurking in the shadows. Jason had faced impossible choices before, but this one was different. He had successfully brought Charlotte home, delivering her safely into Lulu's arms. He had done what he had set out to do, rescued a daughter from the dangers of a life on the run. But in doing so, he had unknowingly put his own son's life in grave danger. Brennan was furious, his meticulously planned assassination of Valentine disrupted, and now, he wanted retribution. He had taken Danny, using him as leverage to force Jason into an unthinkable exchange. One life for another. The terms were clear: return Charlotte, and Danny would live. Refuse, and Jason would never see his son again. It was a nightmare scenario, the kind that twisted his insides and made his usually sharp instincts feel clouded. He had dedicated his life to protecting the people he loved, but how could he make this choice? Handing Charlotte back over to Brennan wasn't an option. She had just escaped the clutches of danger, and Jason couldn't betray Lulu by undoing everything he had fought for. But Danny, his son, his flesh and blood, was out there, at the mercy of a man with no conscience. Every second that passed was a second too long. Jason knew Brennan wasn't bluffing. He had seen firsthand what the man was capable of, and there was no telling how far he would go to make a point. Jason's mind worked quickly, analyzing every possible angle, every potential way to turn the situation in his favor. Surrender wasn't an option. He needed to outmaneuver Brennan before time ran out. He reached out to the people he trusted most, Sonny, Spinelli, and a select few who understood the weight of what was at stake. They worked tirelessly to track Brennan's movements, uncovering his safe houses, his allies, any weakness that could be exploited. Jason wasn't going to give Brennan what he wanted. He was going to take back his son on his own terms. The plan had to be executed perfectly. Any mistake could cost Danny his life. But Jason wasn't just a father in distress, he was a man trained to think 3 steps ahead, to strike before the enemy even realized what was happening. With precise coordination, he and his team infiltrated Brennan's hideout under the cover of darkness. The air was thick with tension as Jason moved swiftly, taking out guards with lethal efficiency, inching closer to where Danny was being held. Then, at the critical moment, Brennan made his final move, dragging Danny forward with a gun pressed against his temple. His cold, calculating voice echoed in the room, offering Jason one last chance to reconsider the exchange. But Jason didn't hesitate. A split second was all he needed, one subtle shift in Brennan's stance, one lapse in focus. And in that moment, Jason took the shot. Brennan fell, his grip loosening, and Danny was pulled to safety. The nightmare was over. Jason gathered his son in his arms, holding onto him tightly, feeling the weight of the decision he had refused to make. He had risked everything, but he had won. Charlotte was safe. Danny was safe. But Jason knew one thing for certain, this wasn't the end. Brennan's death wouldn't erase the enemies he had left behind. Jason had just made himself a bigger target than ever before. And if he wanted to keep his son safe, he would have to stay one step ahead, always. Charlotte's return to Port Charles was supposed to be a moment of joy, a long overdue reunion that would finally bring Lulu the peace she had been longing for. But even as she embraced her daughter, relief flooding through her, a storm was already brewing in the shadows. The truth she had been holding on to, the secret about Gio Palmieri, and the shocking revelation that Brooklyn Courtemanche had been pregnant with Dante's child as a teenager, threatened to shatter everything. Lulu had carried the weight of these secrets for far too long, and now, with Charlotte finally home, she was faced with an impossible decision. Should she keep quiet, allowing her family to enjoy this fragile happiness? Or should she finally bring the truth to light, no matter the consequences? At first, the emotional whirlwind of Charlotte's return kept Lulu preoccupied. She was determined to make up for lost time, ensuring her daughter felt safe and loved. But as the days passed, the burden of the truth pressed heavier on her chest. She had seen firsthand how devastating secrets could be. How they could tear families apart, rewrite histories, and leave wounds that might never fully heal. Brooklyn's past was about to collide with the present in a way no one could have anticipated. If the truth came out, it wouldn't just affect her, it would shake Dante to his core, force him to reevaluate everything he thought he knew about his own past. And what about Gio? His very existence was a secret hidden in the cracks of time, waiting to be exposed. But fate had a cruel way of deciding when the truth would surface. Even if Lulu hesitated, even if she tried to protect those she loved, the secret had already started slipping through the cracks. One whisper in the wrong place, one piece of the puzzle falling into the hands of the wrong person, and soon, all of Port Charles would be caught in the fallout. The Courtemanche and Falconeri families were already standing on fragile ground, and this revelation would be an earthquake. Dante, blindsided by the fact that he had a child he never knew about, would be forced to confront the betrayal. Brooklyn, already struggling with her own complicated emotions, would have to relive the pain of the past. And Gio, how would he react upon learning the truth about who he really was? Amidst it all, Jason would find himself drawn into the chaos. He had just risked everything to bring Charlotte home, but now, another family crisis threatened to consume the people he cared about. And worst of all, a tragedy was looming on the horizon, because secrets this big never surfaced without leaving destruction in their wake. Someone would get hurt. Someone would lose everything. And once the truth was out, nothing in Port Charles would ever be the same again. Stay tuned for the next episodes to witness the intense twists and turns unfolding in Port Charles. Jason has successfully brought Charlotte home, but his nightmare is far from over. With Brennan seeking revenge and Danny's life hanging in the balance, Jason is faced with his most difficult mission yet, saving his own son from the clutches of a ruthless enemy. As the town reels from the shocking secrets Lulu is about to reveal, the Falconeri, Quartermaine, and Chase families are on the verge of a crisis that could change everything. The truth about Giovanni Gio Palmieri in Brooklyn's hidden past threatens to tear them apart, bringing a wave of emotional turmoil and unforeseen consequences. Will Jason find a way to outmaneuver Brennan before it's too late? How will Port Charles react and Lulu's long-buried secrets come to light? And most importantly, will Jason be able to bring Danny home without making a devastating sacrifice? Don't miss what happens next. Tragedy, family betrayals, and high-stakes action are about to collide in ways no one could have imagined.